So in this video we'll be seeing how to track e-commerce and mostly the basic part of it. So we know what e-commerce is. Now suppose if I were to go to my Google Analytics, this is where I would find the stuff related to e-commerce. Go to reports and then under monetization there's overview and there's e-commerce purchases as well. I'll just refresh the page. Yeah, so we can see the overview. This is our demo Google account that I've logged into. Yeah, you can see the different graphs and tables here related to e-commerce. Now if I were to go to my own account and then reports, I'll refresh again. Yeah, so if I were to go to e-commerce here, reports, then monetization. This is actually how it looks, and you'll get all the data related to e-commerce here. There's no data as of yet because we haven't set it up on our account, but yeah, this is where it would appear. So going back to the Google Tag Manager now, if I go to preview the site, yeah, we'll enter the Google Tag Manager preview mode. Just perform some actions, click a few buttons, and if you go back to check the summary, yeah, you can see the data layer, but there's no such specifics of transaction, like there's nothing related to transactions happening here. This is because we don't have those values in the data layer yet. So for example, if I go to the support page, these are the values that I should be looking for. There should be some transaction ID, some transaction total, values like these. But if I go now, I can't see any of these in my in the current values of the data layer, right? So we'll have to push them. So we'll just close this, okay, and we'll go to new. We saw how to push values into data layer using custom HTMLs. So we'll just go here, and firstly before getting into that, what I'll do is I want values such as transaction ID, transaction total, SKU, and so on. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the code, and where I have the thank you button, like the link the thank you button leads me to, I'll just enter this in the link. Product is equal to test plus product. Then the value for SKU will be test plus SKU. The price will be 1. The order ID will be 123. And similarly, I'll change the name of the file to the same thing so that it leads me to this, and this is present in the URL. So we'll see what that means. I'll just close this and show you what it means. Start changes, preview. I go to about. I have created a dummy cart section here where if you click purchase, it will lead you to a thank you site, which means the purchase was successful. So I'll click purchase here, and as you can see, I've been led to the thank you page. But I had linked, I had added the values in the URL itself, right? You can see product is equal to test plus product, SKU is test plus SKU, and so on. Now again, if I were to go to the tag assistant and go to summary data layer, see, we can't find the values related to transaction again. Even if I clicked on the purchase button, I can't find any values related to transaction. So again, we'll have to push them in. So going back to tag manager, new, then tag configuration, custom HTML, and we saw how to push values into data layer. Firstly, We'll start with our script. These are the starting and ending tags of it, and this will be where our function resides. So firstly, window dot data layer dot push. So this tells you what you want to do and where you want to do it into the data layer, and where to look for it, the browser window. So then next, the first thing I want, firstly I'll create the parentheses, and this is where we'll put the values. So firstly I want transaction ID. So I'll set it to before we get into this, we'll have to create variables for the same. Like if I have a purchase value, I'll have to create a variable for that. If I have a query key of order ID, I'll have to create a variable for that. So before doing this, we'll have to create variables. So do not forget this step. I'll just go on to variables, and in user defined variables, we'll select new, and we saw they were in the URL, right? I'll just open the preview once again so that we have a clear idea of what we are working with. About cart section purchase. So these values, we'll have to create variables for them, like one for product, for SKU, price, order ID, right? So new, and these will be our URL variables, right? Because they are in the URL. So we'll select query and query key. What is our query key? Product. URL product. Similarly, we'll create one for SKU, one for price, and one for order ID. URL query SKU URL again, and then query. Now remember that these are case sensitive, so if it's all in lowercase, you need to enter all in lowercase. Price. We have made one for product, we made for SKU. Now all that's left is price and order ID. So we'll create price. Price. And lastly, order ID. Save. And now we can push the values. So now we'll go into tags, and using these variables we'll push the transaction values into the data layer. So now we'll go to new, so custom HTML, and then we'll write our script, both the start and end tags. Then inside the script we'll add our main functions, which is window.datalayer.push, and this is the function. This is what we are doing. We are pushing values where in the data layer, and where to find that in the browser window. So we'll add our curly braces, and here is where we'll add the values. So suppose I want transaction ID. Transaction ID, I want to set it on the variable that I created for order ID. So URL order ID. Then I'll add a comma. Then I want transaction total. So I'll set this on the price variable, URL price. Now next I want transaction products. So I want the details of the products that are there. So name, SKU, price, quantity, everything, right? So I can't just set one variable to this. I need to create an array for this. So what I'll do is, for creating an array, I'll put a square bracket and then curly bracket and then end it. Then inside this area is where we'll be adding the details. So firstly is the SKU, and we had created a variable for this, URL SKU. Then next we have our name, that was the product variable that we had created, URL product. Then we have the price, and finally we have the quantity. Now quantity, I am just setting it to 1 for now, like we are just assuming that only one product is being bought. So quantity, I'm just setting it to 1. And yeah, this is how our data push code should look like. But remember to end it with a semicolon, and then we'll set a trigger to it, like when do you want these values to get pushed in. So we'll create a trigger. We want it when the page loads, but only on some page views. Like if the page loads and the URL has, let's say, value of price greater than 0, because we had set the price to 1, right, in the URL. So we'll select URL price greater than 0. Since 1 is greater than 0, we know that this condition will be true and it will fire. So we'll set it to PV price greater than 0, right? Save. And this as well, data layer push, e-commerce tracking, right? We'll save this, and now we should be able to see those values, right? If I go to preview, there's been an error here. Let's see what it is. I forgot to add a comma after the price. So like after all these products, you'll have to enter comma. Right? So now if you save and preview, it should work. Yeah. So the errors have been resolved. We just needed to add commas after each product detail, after each value. So if I go here now, then go to about, and then click the purchase button, and I'm led to the thank you page, and you can see in the URL we have price 1, so which means it's greater than 1, and it should have fired here. So we'll just go to Google Tag Manager. Now the data layer, we had created the push, like the values were being pushed into the data layer, but we won't be able to see them in the summary. Why? Because firstly, when we had created variables based on the URL, we needed the parameters to be in the URL, but since Visual Studio doesn't allow me to, suppose if I go to your rename, I need to set it as parameters, right? So this page would need to be /?, but Visual Studio doesn't allow me to set it as that. So these won't be tracked as parameters by Google Tag Manager. Alright, so they still won't show in the summary, but this is how you do it. And then once you have pushed the values into the data layer, you get a message, right? You get an event named message, but that's not very helpful because we need to know what that message is. So like in the previous video we had done, we'll name that message event as eCommerce update, single quotes, right? So now the message pop-up that you used to get, you'll get it as eCommerce update now. So we'll click save, So that's how you push your values into the data layer. Now we will have to just associate a tag using the values we have just pushed. So new, here I'll create a custom HTML. Start changes. I'll create a GA4 event since we need to do the tracking, right? And event name will be eCommerce update. Alright, now when do we need this event to fire? And there's a custom event happening, and the name of the event must be eCommerce update, right? So we'll name this CE commerce update. Save. And the tag will name it as G4 commerce update. So to sum it up, firstly what we did was we saw that in the data layer we didn't have any transactional values, so we hard coded them into the URL, and from there we created variables where the variable read that the order ID is 123, the price is 1. So we created those variables and then we pushed the values using that variables into the data layer. So if we go here, my bad, the data layer push tag, and we are pushing these values. The transaction ID must be the URL order ID. The order ID in the URL was 123, so the transaction ID would be 123. Transaction total is set to URL price, which will be 1. Then the transaction products, which was an array, the SKU will be test SKU, name would be test product, and again the price would be 1. And the pop-up that we used to get, not pop-up, the event that we used to get, which was named as a message, we would get it as e-commerce update. And when will it happen? When in the page view, the URL price in the URL, the price is greater than 0, right? So if we close this, again it wouldn't work here because, as I explained, that in Visual Studio it doesn't allow me to name the file like that, so I can't redirect the page to a new page where in the URL I have set certain parameters. So yeah, this is how you do e-commerce tracking in Google Tag Manager. It's how you push certain values into the data layer and then use these values to send them to Tag Manager, and then these values can later be sent to different e-commerce platforms. Right. So this was all for the video. Thank you.